Hey everyone, on this week's Trade to Black podcast, we talk about the Ukraine and Russia war and the pressure that it's implementing on the centralized banking system, knowing the sanctions against Russia. However, many are pivoting towards cryptocurrency and decentralized finance during these times. Why? Many companies are grossly undervalued, trading at cash, meaning their market cap is, say, $30 million, yet they have $30 million of cash in the bank. What kind of opportunity does that present? We break it all down in our latest podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. Before we get started this week's podcast, as usual, Ben, we don't have Anthony here to time this, but I'm going to give this probably in under 12 seconds, knowing I did 14 seconds last week. So here we go. All views on the Trade to Black podcast, the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Was that under 12, Ben?
That's pretty good. I didn't time it, but I think you got under 10 there, I think.
Well,
That's
welcome. Our lead financial writer, Ben, joins us. And look who we have here in the middle this week. The CEO of publicly traded listed DeFi company Liquid, Jonathan Wiesblatt, joins us. Jonathan, great to have you on. How are things?
Great to be here, Shad. Things are great. Thanks for having me.
Crazy world, crazy times we're living in right now with these markets. And I know that you've got a big up-and-coming company and upcoming industry, but for the most part, what's some of the feedback that you're hearing? But first off, I actually want to begin. In addition to being CEO of a company, you're also a former portfolio manager at Sprott. So a deep understanding on the markets, how markets obviously perform, how they trend. So one of the main reasons we wanted to have you on is just to get an idea. I think we have an idea where we are today, but most importantly, what are our next moves and what should we anticipate knowing your in-depth knowledge of the market?
Yeah, so thanks again for having me, Ben. Great to be here with you. What I would say is markets, they don't like uncertainty. So there's a lot of things that are creating uncertainty today. With war going on with Russia and Ukraine, everybody knows about that. Tons of uncertainty. It's really, I think, people in Europe and the European Union, and given the global financial strength of that part of the world, it's cause for concern. So that's number one. Number two, we have the prospects for continued rising interest rates, both here domestically in Canada and abroad, specifically the United States, and rising inflation. So those three big factors are really this year, 2022's big potential points of uncertainty. And so how are investors going to navigate through that? So what I like to do is I always like to look at valuations, and I look at the S&P 500, which is the broadest, set of the largest companies in the world, as a benchmark for where things are going. And when I look at the earnings and the current valuation of the S&P 500, and then I factor in things like inflation, rising interest rates, global macro, socio-political uncertainty, I am very cautious about the markets today. It looks like, based on current year and next year's earnings estimates, the S&P 500 looks to me a little bit expensive and overvalued based on points in time that we can compare to the past. So overall, as we approach the second quarter of the year, I'm still slightly cautious about the equity market. So that's my view.
Okay.
And
sorry,
go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, specifically to like the crypto and DeFi market, which I know that you're involved with. A lot of people think these markets are kind of synonymous, right? They think that crypto is DeFi in a lot of ways, and obviously there's a lot of connections there and correlations and so forth. But is the DeFi market and crypto market, are they the same thing, and how do they differ in terms of the way that they trade and how the assets are valued?
So in periods of volatility and uncertainty in global capital markets, right, you see tight correlations between all risk assets. So you have a flight to safety, flight to cash, flight to bonds, but all risk assets, so commodities, currencies, equities, and now crypto, in these types of environments, they've all been very tightly correlated. I don't believe that this should be the case over the long term for crypto DeFi markets. And let's compare them to equity markets. What I believe is going to happen, guys, is that as adoption rates, as they rise for crypto, I believe you're going to see that unwind of that tight correlation. So right now, if you charted the price of a Bitcoin or an ETH token with the Qs, which is a proxy for the NASDAQ, you would see like very, very tight correlation. And again, as time goes on, adoption rates rise, I think you're going to start to see that decoupling. There are different asset classes, clearly. The reason for tight correlation today is crypto and DeFi is considered, I think, globally by the traditional investor as a very highly risk asset, right? It's risky, it's volatile, it's not very well known, and has, again, low adoption rates. So considered highest risk. When you go into a deep sell-off like we've been experiencing here with other asset classes, it's risk off, and then the riskiest assets, they get sold first. We started to see the crypto markets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the other, layer one tokens that we track at Liquid, we started to see those really come off before global equity markets. And so, again, risk off, high risk first. Crypto has been beaten up really badly.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on that by saying, the events in Russia with the war and stuff like that, it's got to be really challenging for crypto investors and DeFi investors in a lot of ways, because Russia is a big part of the market. They've been taking on a lot of Bitcoin miners, for example. And, there's a lot of complications there in terms of what could happen with, write-downs from big companies and like the connections with North American companies to the crypto market there. How do you view this whole Russia situation and how it's going to shape the investment landscape in the crypto market and the DeFi market for that matter?
Right. So what worries me most about Russia are these global sanctions, and we're starting to see the Western developed world. They're putting all types of financial restrictions around the neck of Russia, so to speak. And so that's quite concerning. So the ability for companies to finance, to operate within Russia, given that the banking system over there has been completely strangled by the West, that's cause for concern. However, with all of that said, that's a traditional and a very centralized approach to restricting what a country can do financially, internally. That's very positive for crypto and for decentralized finance.
100%, right?
Yes. So what that actually means in a decentralized world is that you don't have to operate under the regulatory prowess of central governments in Western Europe and in North America, Australia, New Zealand, etc. So the flow of capital can continue without that oversight. And so what we're seeing in crypto markets is we're seeing volumes rising since this whole experience in Russia, Ukraine has started on the world stage. And volumes are very good for businesses that operate in DeFi like Liquid. I don't want to get too specific about our business per se, but decentralized finance, the transaction volumes on exchanges and dApps like Uniswap and SushiSwap, they're continuing to take on more and more volumes as investors move away from centralized operating structures. So it's very bad for Russia at large. It's very good, I believe, for the growth. And again, I'll use the word adaptation or adoption for crypto investors and users.
So when you look at the sanctions that are being implemented on Russia, a lot of this, volume that's picked up in a lot of ways decentralized is to skirt these sanctions, because in a centralized system, there's so much uncertainty. But yeah, when I look at a company like yourself, like you're trading at cash, which is fucking bonkers. What is it that people are like, you've got 30 million in cash, your market cap's in around $30 million. Forget about what people are missing. Like, what does the investment opportunity present for Liquid Meta and to your investors right now? But even outside of that, what's the most important educational message that investors need to understand about this space during the times that we're living?
Right. So let's just start with small cap companies that I've seen time and time again in all kinds of bad and negative cycles like we're in right now, trading for cash value.
Yeah.
When companies like this trade for cash value, it's because the market just doesn't want any risk assets, right? So let's start with our stock trades in Canada, which is it's a small cap, micro cap company, and it's being exposed to one of the most perceived volatile asset classes in the world, which is crypto. So lots of times in the past, so we've seen energy markets get destroyed, companies trading to 30% free cash flow yields, cash values. We've seen tech booms and bust cycles like we saw in the dot-com crisis in the early 2000s. This is not new for companies like ours trading at cash value, but it represents a significant opportunity. Here's why. DeFi, which is the area of crypto that we are operating in, the industry is just 4 years old, guys. It's brand spanking new. You're getting a look at a dot-com company back in 1988, 89, 90, 91, like right at the beginning of that huge 30-year growth curve, okay? We believe crypto's here to stay. It's going to eat away at other larger asset classes. You could digitize things like bonds, equities, cash, derivatives, all of those things. Crypto is going to continue to take market share of total asset values. So you want to be exposed to companies like ours that are going to take advantage of that long growth curve. The reason why you want to invest in a company at its cash value is because there are no expectations that we're going to be able to grow our business. There's no expectations that this company is going to be able to generate positive cash flow, positive free cash flow, and really execute a business model. If you believe in DeFi and you believe in crypto and you believe that those industries are going to grow,
which they will,
liquidity provision, that these applications, that decentralized finance needs to grow from liquidity, if you believe in those things, and if you believe that the value of cash per share is the right entry point, then it's a no-brainer to start buying up assets like ours. So good management teams, good business models, extraordinarily attractive valuations. Those are typically all of the recipes for a successful investment.
Now, surely it must be a little bit frustrating, John, considering that your model is not like a psychedelic company where it's going to be hemorrhaging cash for a long time, assuming the pipeline goes anywhere and you're going to have to conduct multiple raises. You actually have a very strong balance sheet. You could very well, Liquid Mana could very well be generating cash flow because you have your low OPEX costs, and yet it's still trading at cash or maybe even a little below right now. So it must be a little frustrating knowing that just risk assets aren't in favor right now, and yet you're sitting right here. I mean, this is really the true opportunity for the long-term investor to take a look at these type of companies, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just get back to some of the points that you raised. Volatility can be your best friend or your biggest enemy. For companies like ours, volatility can be helpful for the most part. Okay, like volatility, too much volatility is never good for any business model. But for ours, in DeFi, when you have a lot of volatility, that means a lot of transaction volumes. When you have a lot of transaction volumes, a lot of trading, Ben, so you and Chad are in there, selling all your crypto every day and volumes rise, that's good for our business. We generate revenues based on transaction volumes. So that's where volatility can be a company like Liquid Mana's best friend. Where it can hurt us is the cost of protecting the balance sheet can rise. In addition to, the volatility of the underlying asset values, even though we're using layer one tokens, so multi-billion-dollar tokens in our liquidity pools, and even though we are hedging those our exposure to those layer one tokens for the most part, volatility can still have an impact. However, with that being said, our business looks to reduce volatility as much as we can to preserve and protect the balance sheet. Preservation of our shareholder capital is paramount, and these points in times will allow us to really focus on executing the business model, growing the business, improving our platform, growing our software capabilities, adding more exposure to interesting areas of DeFi. So although volatility can be your best friend and your worst enemy at points in time, it allows good management teams like ours to be laser focused on the growth for the long term. So again, cash value is bleeping berserk, like you mentioned, Chad, and it's a great opportunity for investors to be having a look at this space.
So, something to bring up too is there's less than 1.5% of people globally have a crypto wallet right now, which is mind-blowing when you think of how polarizing this industry is and how much conversation is happening. But if you were to look at DeFi, crypto, where we are, let's say in the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be catalyst moments. If you had to predict where we are in that time frame, what do these industries look like, and what are some catalyst moments that you think will occur over the next couple of years pertaining to it? I know it's a pretty broad question, but you know, I personally believe it's obviously a generational thing. You know, I would assume that a lot of the investors that you have are more, you know, in the 25 to 45 year range. But truthfully, at the end of the day, as you start to see more and more sanctions being developed and uncertainty related around the centralized system, you've got a whole new younger generation that are saying, fuck the system, let's try something different. And it's just the emergence of this younger audience. So I think you're going to see obviously fast growth. How that growth happens, I'm curious to see some of the conversations and feedback that you think that you might find are trending in that direction.
So let's talk about the big global macro trend that, in my opinion, has been really driving the crypto market. And again, that word adoption rates over the past 10 years, okay?
Yeah.
It's not happening in the developed world. It's the developing world, okay? It's where you have the vast majority of the population, which is a young population. They don't own bank accounts. They're unbanked. Okay, they don't have bank accounts because they don't have enough money to put into a savings account or deposit account to attract the interest of your traditional banking environment. So where are people moving capital? Where are people financing their day-to-day lives, paying their rents, paying their bills? They're using mobile devices to do so. Okay,
yeah,
and they're using crypto. They're using crypto wallets because they can't get traditional bank accounts. So that trend, it's not going away. Okay, so we're going to see continued massive rates of adoption for crypto wallets, crypto assets, crypto tokens. There's huge underlying trends that we're seeing in this play to earn theme, which is going on inside crypto and DeFi, which is creating more and more opportunities for vast majorities of populations outside of developed worlds to access and to be able to, finance their day-to-day lives. So those trends are going to continue to carry us forward. Now let's look at DeFi.
How do those trends, John, come to fruition though, right? We all talk about that and we do think it's a trend happening, but there's no quick solution to a lot of this. But we live here in North America. When you think about how many of the world's population doesn't have an account, it's just like, I'm curious as to know what's going on in other parts of the world that I can't really understand and relate to. And how do those trends that you talk about come to fruition? Like, what are some of the conversations you have based off of that?
Right. So it's a really tough question to answer, Shad. All I know is that there's more and more of the population that are looking to, open up a crypto wallet to purchase a Bitcoin or an ETH token or a stable coin in order to finance their day-to-day lives. People don't have as much faith outside of traditional Western developed markets in your major currencies, the euro, the US dollar. People, are nervous. Over the last 10 years, we've had just a huge amount of money supply. It's increased. People are very worried about inflation. So there are those in this world that feel that using other digital assets is the best way to, to park their capital or to, finance their day-to-day lives. So those trends, those big macro trends, they're not disappearing anytime soon. And this is going to be like a really, really positive tailwind. It's going to be a massive wind at the sail of crypto investors.
Now, it's my understanding that Liquid Meta is the only publicly traded liquidity miner in the world. So do you view that as like a first mover advantage that you have? And also, do you expect more liquidity miners? I know you're more than that. You're also a technology provider for the institutional side of it as well. But do you expect more liquidity miners and more of these type of companies to come on board?
Yeah, so there's no doubt in my mind that we'll see some follow-on competition coming into the space. So we anticipate that. In fact, there's probably some crypto companies today who have busted business models that are looking at models that are similar to ours and contemplating whether or not they should pivot or transition. I fully anticipate that. So although we have first mover advantage now, I do expect that we'll see some other groups coming into the play. Now, the reason for going public is a very good question, Ben, and one that I think that we should talk about here on the podcast. The the access to attractive cost of capital, I guess when we went public back in the fall, made it very easy for us to access and go public, and then to deploy that capital in an environment where you had disproportionately higher rates of return. So take attractive capital from the public market, run it through your business model and your technology platform, and capture higher rates of return, attractive yields is a no-brainer, right? So it was one big arbitrage opportunity for us. In addition to that, while we are taking advantage of those higher yields, we have a self-funding business model. We should be able to generate enough cash flow to fund our growth for years to come. So we don't need more capital. So we take that free cash flow from our operations and we reinvest it in technology, in growth, in new markets, in new opportunities, in overhead, CapEx, all of those things. Most companies, like the ones that you suggested earlier, psychedelics, or even cannabis companies from many, many years ago when they were other emerging growth companies, they're consumers of capital. They burn capital before they can get to that plateau where all of a sudden the business takes off and they can generate the cash flow to fund. We're already there, which is a very, very unique business model.
Think about that, right?
An emerging company.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to ask, you used to obviously be a portfolio manager, have a rich history, obviously, in the whole banking centralized finance world. What was it that got you interested to make a move like this, to become a CEO within this space? And I'd be curious to know some of the colleagues that you have within the industry, how are they viewing the overall DeFi space? Because as you've said, we've seen explosive growth. I don't think we've seen an industry grow like this ever in the history of mankind, have we?
I've never seen it. So total value locked in DeFi virtually has gone from zero to just about 300 billion in 2 years. I've never seen a 300x over 24 months ever. Not even 24 months yet. It will be as we approach June. So massive growth in the sector, like huge adoption rates. Again, adoption rates, right? That's really
so cool. You've been following this for 2 years and saying, if this adds this kind of growth, I've got to obviously get ahead of the trend, correct?
Correct. And so, like I said, back when the dot-com era really started, like the internet, web 1.0, I was still in high school. I didn't really know how to take advantage of those emerging trends. But never in my investment career have I seen an opportunity to participate in an emerging growth industry quite like this. So it really was a no-brainer for me to walk away from a career of 20 years that I have worked day in, day out for, to go and try to take advantage of this. That's number one. Number two, when you have co-founders of a company like the ones that I have, that have global knowledge, global success, that have built very, very large companies that support the crypto infrastructure at large, you feel very confident in your ability to grow another great company. And that's what LiquidMeta is. So if you go look at the bios on our website, liquidmeta.io, and you pay attention to some of the co-founders and the strategic investors and advisors and the management team members of this business, I don't see how you come away with anything but a high degree of confidence that this business is going to take advantage of tons of emerging trends in the sector.
Now, my last question over here, John, is the regulatory front. As you know, it's very dicey right now. The SEC comes in periodically and says that we will allow crypto, or we want to create a framework for regulations, and then another week it's skeptical about it, and there's hearings in Congress. So, walk us through the regulatory aspect of DeFi. Is there any worries that perhaps the SEC or federal U.S. regulations will come in and set the standard and sort of suppress the industry somehow? Or is this going to, is DeFi big enough to sort of overcome any sort of challenges that could throw its way? And will the market adapt if that happens?
Right. So I'm always cautious, or I'm always aware of the things that I don't know, guys. And the one thing that I don't know is how the regulatory framework is going to play out for crypto, for DeFi. What I do know is that there will be a regulatory framework, especially in developed, sophisticated, mature economies like the United States, Canada, Australia, Western Europe, right? It's coming, and anybody who is not anticipating some form of regulation probably shouldn't be operating in the industry. How it's going to unfold, how it's going to shake out, I just don't know. So all that I can do is I can work to build Liquid Meta, our organization, really as a company that wants to participate in a very transparent, diplomatic, helpful manner towards working towards that regulatory body. That's creating, a great deal of transparency. So being a public company, showing our quarterly financial results, our annual results, they're audited, having a public website where, the SEC, the OSC, the regulatory bodies of Europe, everybody can see what we're doing, who we are, and what we're about. So it's really creating that great deal of transparency for the market abroad. What I do know is that the regulators are going to want to create an environment that is probably, going to reduce a lot of counterparty risk, especially in DeFi. Know who you're dealing with on the other side of the trade, and Liquid Meta is fully prepared to accept those changes in the industry.
I'd be curious to know what's going to happen to the old guard, like the Jamie Dimons of the world, what their view on the industry is, but. These guys are smart for a reason. I don't think they're going to go away. It's only a matter of time before, like, say, for example, a Kevin O'Leary that was totally against this industry for quite some time. Now he's a big advocate. I can't help but think there's going to be a lot of players on, Wall Street that are going to buy back into the system too, and they see the overall growth. Do you not think?
Yeah, so I mean, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citibank, Deutsche Bank in Europe, Bank Santander, these are some of the biggest companies in the world for a reason, right? The Royal Bank of Canada, the biggest company in Canada by market value. They're the biggest companies in the world because just of how great they are, and their business models are phenomenal. And specifically here in Canada, which is a microcosm of the global financial industry, these five banks that operate in Canada, they're monopolies, and they're monopolies for a reason. They're great businesses. They're some of the best in the world. So is decentralized finance, just that broad term, that industry at large, is it something that's on their radar? I can't imagine that it's not, right? It's something that I think that these banks are anticipating. The banks spend billions of dollars a year on fintech and becoming more technologically adaptable, right? So in my opinion, there is no way that the banks, one, don't have DeFi on the radar, and two, don't have some type of framework or roadmap as to how to, participate and grow alongside this world. You don't see industries go from 0 to 300 billion without it capturing the attention of
100%. 100%. John, when we look at the big picture, look where we are in today's world. The banks are mainstream media. The crypto space is Joe Rogan. You look at big pharma, and then you look at psychedelics. It's all these big changes that are happening. There's so much change that is going to happen. The only thing that we don't have on our side that can move fast enough is time. But when you look at how much the emergence of these industries have exploded, we've had conversations with CEOs of psychedelic companies, and we're like, if this industry was private right now, there'd be no better time. Obviously, they've been hit pretty hard with the whole biotech industry being down. But I'd be curious to get your feedback. This week, Joe Biden, he announced that the U.S. is about to unveil a strategy to address the mental health crisis across the country, which is something you've never really heard any administration really talk about. But these are the times that we're in. So saying that, I don't know how much you follow the psychedelic industry, or if so at all, but if you had to take a step back, look at this, industry, how big pharma has kind of hit a roadblock, what would you say are the catalysts? What do they have to be going forward? And, as far as investment managers, what are some of those moments for them to start paying more attention to a growth sector like psychedelics?
Yeah, so I don't follow the psychedelic sector really at all. I guess my mental health recently has been beaten up with the markets, but other than that, I don't follow. But what I can tell you is, as a former portfolio manager, as a former asset manager, some of the key catalysts that PMs will look for redeploying capital back into the space will be a regulatory shift or a change that's positive for an industry, a catalyst in the industry that's going to create and spur growth, right? So investors love growth, and then valuation. So when does the industry get to a point where valuations just become too attractive for a portfolio manager, an investment manager to ignore? And I would really focus in and have your audience focus in on those three things. When 1, 2, 3, all of those things occur, then it's probably a good time to start paying attention.
Listen, I honestly, John, this has been great as far as the overall education, knowing the times what we're living. I know Russia has expressed a lot of interest in the crypto space and liquidity mining. Do you still believe that? You know, this is prior to the war actually happening. Do you think this is a major priority for them, knowing that we're now in the hands of a war that's taken place? Is this a major priority, or do you think there's some disbelief to it as to what their view is on the entire industry?
Sorry, Shad, I missed the first part of the question. Can you just repeat that?
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Well, this has been great, John, as far as like just educating us as well, like on the whole crypto space and where we're at right now, the DeFi space as well, and where we're trending. One last thing before I let you go, I do want to touch base on Russia has expressed in the past about being a key player within the crypto space, and this is a major priority for them. But this was prior to a war. Now that the war is taking place, do you believe that and believe that they are a big I guess contributor, or not contributor, but it's a main focal point for them moving forward? Because there's a lot of impact this country has on the space.
Yeah, so I really haven't studied Russia in any great detail in terms of their capital market strategy or their crypto market strategy. You know, it's quite sad what's happening in Ukraine. I think the global community, especially here in the West, is very sympathetic, and as am I. So I don't really know what to say about Russia's market participation. What I can say is that the restrictions that are being placed on a country like Russia by Western democracies is probably having a great deal of financial stress inside that country. Like that's the whole point of it, right? It's to cut off their ability to finance a war. And so what I would think is happening there is the country is looking for alternative ways to circumvent those financial sanctions, those restrictions, and whether or not they're using crypto to do that is something like I'm not smart enough or knowledgeable enough to know. But like I said, Russia is a very touchy subject, and I'd like to look at the growth of the crypto markets on a global scale and not just isolated to just Russia. I think adoption rates are rising tremendously. I think opportunities for crypto markets are going to, rise exponentially over the next many, many, many years. And so I want to be a part of that growth. And the Russia-Ukraine isolated event right now, it will pass, hopefully sooner than later. But I think that the world, when it comes to crypto and DeFi and decentralization, I think we need to look at the big picture, not just at Russia and Ukraine as an isolated event.
It should make for a good case study to see if crypto adoption actually happens and DeFi adoption with the Russia thing, with them being shut off from SWIFT. So I think it'll make a good case study to see if adoption rates actually increase going forward. But that's going to be something to watch that I'm watching on my end.
Well, this has been rather educational, to say the least. A lot obviously going on, lots of information to obviously learn with the way this industry is trending, the whole financial system, obviously, with a lot of the sanctions that are being pressured, just further elaborates on this whole decentralized landscape and the opportunity it presents. But even though we talk about companies like yourselves trading at cash, I think the underlying issue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, is just more education and more people truly understanding about the industry as a whole and where it's trending towards. Do you not agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. It takes time to educate the investment community at large. And we are a small cap company trading in Canada. If you look at the way that the capital markets are structured in Canada, it's financials, it's energy, it's metals and mines, and some consumer, right? Like, we are not overly known outside of some very large companies like Spotify, for example, for our technology sector. So it's really going to take a lot of education, a lot of road shows, a lot of meetings to really get the message. More and more, conversations like this, Shad, with you and Ben, getting the message out there. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, this has been great, obviously, here today. Listen, I appreciate you checking in. Be well. Usually at the end of each podcast, we always talk about who their picks are for this week in the NFL, but the season is over, so I'm going to tweak it a bit. Have you got a Stanley Cup winner in your back pocket that you can predict. And do not say the Toronto Maple Leafs. You can, but
so I bleed blue and white. In my heart, it's the Leafs, right? I'm in Toronto. I've been a fan. Like I'm not picking them. Okay, I'm going to go with my son's favorite player, Nathan McKinnon. I'm going to go with the Avs. I'm going
the Avs?
Eastern Conference. I'm going to Western Conference. Avs.
Okay. Nazem Kadri MVP. Let's not go that far, right?
If he makes it through a playoff series, right? He hasn't made it through a round.
Yeah, good point. Ben, who you got?
Yeah, the Avalanche is a good pick, but I'm going to go with the Panthers. I took them in my pool last year. Apparently, it was a little bit early. Bobrovsky kind of shit the bed a little bit in net, and they had to bring in the new guy. So I think the team is ready. They're a deep team. They got stars at the top. So I'm going Panthers. Maybe Panthers, Avs in the Stanley Cup final.
I'm going Toronto Maple Leafs. I know I'm not. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I think I've got you at the Avs, Jonathan. I like that pick a lot. I think it's like that loss last year to Vegas taught them a lot. But I can't stand them. I'm a Red Wings fan, but I think this is the year of the Avalanche. They're a hell of a team, that's for sure. But anyways, listen, I appreciate the time. Please keep in touch. And I really appreciate, obviously, providing our viewers. And for more information, obviously, don't forget, we're going to leave some comments below. So if anybody could just leave a comment below, tap on, obviously, your notification bell for more information that we have pertaining to, obviously, the crypto and DeFi space. Thanks again, gents, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you giving this video a thumbs up. We also value your feedback, so leave a comment below. And if you like what we do, then share this video on your socials. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and tap on that bell to receive notifications for all future videos that we post. Thanks for watching.